ispirazione, la tua ricerca, no?
Dedizione, il suo tempo.
Una grande produttrice a quel che succedeva.
Finnish and also Russian curators to work in this project. It's called Conference of the Birds.
Can you make it?
I'll try this. Ha cominciato a interessarsi di questi cormorani quando hanno cominciato a presentarsi a casa sua verso la fine degli anni 90 e ne è subito rimasta affascinata e quindi sono circa 20 anni che li segue. E dopodiché quest'altra curatrice l'ha contattata perché voleva fare un progetto artistico sulla zona nordica, insomma nelle parti nordiche, e hanno invitato diversi artisti danesi, finlandesi, insomma di tutte quelle parti per lavorare insieme.
Seeing these birds every summer and returning to the same island, at the same time in beginning of the 2000, there was other things that appeared that every spring when they came there was a lot of press articles and people were following where they started nesting and the tone of the writings were a bit kind of negative. Nobody wanted them to come too near to their houses and so there was this very interesting mix of things, this aesthetics of the nesting islands and then this media attention, this that was sociologically quite provoking, and then I learned more of these birds and they were fascinating. Their behavior, they are very timid. They go away from the islands when somebody is getting near and then when Eva contacted me, I thought that this is the moment, because she wanted to work with birds, that this was the moment to make something out of the great cormorant.
Agli inizi degli anni 2000 sono comparsi anche degli articoli giornalistici che parlavano in maniera diciamo negativa di questi cormorani e della loro vita vicino a questa centrale e Ula sono molto interessate a questo adattamento anche perché questi uccelli sono molto timidi in realtà nella loro natura e voleva un attimo studiare un pochino il comportamento e la vita integrata di questi cormorani con la centrale.
And I already knew Jan since 15 years and because he's the person who is observing seafaring and moving in these areas where the birds are nesting, so it was a very natural choice that I called him and we met and I told that I want to do something with great cormorants, would you like to be a part of the project? And yes, he was thinking about it and finally he said yes. And there is Launa, who is a Finnish composer, experimental sound artist. I really love her work since a long time. I also participated as a singer in her amateur choir some years earlier, and I knew that she's working with the choir. And I thought that maybe this would be a chance to work together and invite the choir also to this thing. So we three started working on this piece very intuitively and not having a very kind of any direct plan or something, but little by little this whole thing formed. We worked together in some islands near to the cormorant colonies and had these brainstorming sessions in these places.
Ian Irel già lavorava in queste zone e con questi soggetti, e quindi Ula voleva già tantissimo approcciarlo, e alla fine è riuscita a convincerlo per collaborare. E poi nel team è entrata anche Launau, che invece si occupa più della sonorità, e insieme, senza avere un piano specifico, hanno cominciato a creare questo progetto.
So once we knew that the choir will sing somewhere in the archipelago as a part of the project, I've invited also a woman called Meri Markula, who is an artist, and she's very good with textiles, so she came as a costume designer for the choir. And then we had a great pleasure to work with Karolina Noma, who is a scholar, literature scholar, who has dedicated her work to bird-related Nordic poetry and literature. So she wrote a very nice essay and made a research around of the great cormorants in Finland. Valerio, can we change to the next video? Thank you.
Il team si è poi allargato con Carolina, che si occupava che si occupava di letteratura e ha scritto appunto un saggio riguardante questi soggetti, e Miriam Marcola, che invece si occupava di costumi, e insieme hanno collaborato in questo progetto.
The first video that we saw, it's showing the arrival of the great cormorants to the Baltic Sea. It's in March normally, when there is still ice in the sea, and when they arrive, they normally go back to the same islands that they were living. And why we wanted to dedicate artwork for great cormorants? There is a historical reason, or there is a lack of history and cultural trace in Finland. There is no poetry, there is no literature, visual arts, neither music around of these birds.
E questo video che vedete è stato girato in marzo, quando c'era ancora il ghiaccio, e i cormorani arrivavano perché tornano sempre nell'isola in cui vivono, e perché hanno deciso di lavorare appunto su questi soggetti, sui cormorani, perché, come dice Ula, in Finlandia non c'è non se ne occupano, per quanto riguarda la letteratura, per quanto riguarda la storia, non c'è materiale che si occupa di questo soggetto, e quindi volevano colmare il vuoto.
So these birds in Baltic Sea, they are not alien species. They are a bit invasive, but very little. But they were living in these coasts 100 years ago, but in the beginning of the 20th century, they were forced away because people, from the same reasons that today, they started not liking them. They caused disgust because they form these big colonies. They eat a lot of fish, and the islands smell sometimes.
Questi uccelli in realtà vivevano in queste zone già un centinaio di anni fa, ma sono stati forzati ad andarsene perché gli abitanti non erano molto contenti, e loro, in quanto formano delle grandi colonie, mangiano molto pesce, fanno molta cacca, e quindi i luoghi tendono a puzzare parecchio.
And as they were absent from Finland since beginning of the 20th century, and came back in 1996. And in 1996 they came back, and in Europe, EU, there were regulations that protect these birds. So now they could not be killed anymore. So there was this 100 years that they were absent. And during when Finland got its independence in 1917 from Russia, and of course the young nation has always this natural romanticism, and a lot of arts was created out of the nature, of a lot of birds and other animals. But as the great cormorants were not nesting at that moment in Finland, no song, neither poet was written of a great cormorant.
E dopo che sono appunto stati forzati ad andarsene un centinaio di anni fa, sono poi tornati nel 1996. In quel momento hanno introdotto delle leggi che vietavano appunto di uccidere questi cormorani. La Finlandia, nel momento in cui ha ottenuto l'indipendenza dalla Russia, ha cercato di costruire un patrimonio culturale, letterario, artistico riguardante la natura, però appunto non c'era ancora qualcosa che riguardava questi soggetti.
And if you read Finnish newspapers every spring, you would imagine that these birds are occupying most of our archipelago and the coast sides. But the study says that there is 34,000 islands that are less than 5 hectares in Finnish Baltic Sea, and only 0.3% of these islands are occupied by these birds. So it's very, very tiny amount of the islands, but the reaction of the people when they see these birds coming to their neighborhoods, it's really fierce.
Se leggete i giornali finlandesi, ogni anno, ogni primavera pubblicano degli articoli molto ostili nei confronti di questi cormorani e della loro presenza, quando invece nel Mar Baltico troviamo 34.000 isole, e di queste 34.000 isole solo il 0,3% è occupato dai cormorani. Però appunto il loro modo di vivere provoca grandissima ostilità anche nei giornali e da parte degli abitanti, e quindi se ne parla in questi termini.
And these images are from Järviluoto, that is, there are 2 islands next to Rauma Industrial Port. And this this year, it's the biggest colony in Finland. and they live in a very noisy place. There is the next of this island, there is this industrial port and a lot of boats and cranes and so, and these birds are having their nest and they enjoy this place. But they kind of ruined the plans of this port to expand. As it's a protected species, the port can't occupy these islands that was already planned before they came there. So that makes also the birds very hated in this port, because the industrial plan and economic growth is kind of like ruined because of them. And now this island has 5,000 nests. That means that in the end of the year there will be something like 28,000 birds living in there.
Ci sono 2 isole vicino a Roma, penso quello che stiamo vedendo ora, e qui c'è la colonia più grande di cormorani che vive in un luogo molto molto rumoroso, perché qua troviamo la zona industriale e il porto. E quello che ho detto ora è che in realtà questi cormorani stanno un po' rovinando i piani industriali, perché appunto per legge non possono essere uccisi e quindi provocano dei problemi un po' ai trasporti, all'economia. Ci sono al momento circa 5.000 nidi in questa zona, il che vuol dire che presto ci saranno più o meno 28.000 cormorani in quest'area.
As you can see from these films recorded by Janera, the birds are not occupying pristine natural paradises. They live near to the places that human activity is very strong, and you can see that they live near to the nuclear power plant, they live near to the carbon plant, they live near industrial port and also near to the windmills. So they are not selecting places that would be very, very pristine and in a natural condition.
Questi cormorani, come vedete dal video, non vivono in una natura pura, ma vivono appunto a contatto con zone colonizzate dall'uomo, zone prettamente industriali, dove si trova il porto, dove si trova la centrale nucleare e la centrale del carbone, quindi non c'è molto di naturale nel loro habitat.
And as I said earlier, there is no literature and poems dedicated to these birds in Finland, but instead there are a lot of bureaucratic texts, there are scientific studies, there are surveys, and it's like they are occupying very many bureaucrats' offices, and they are studied in many ways. And Launau used as material one of the scientific studies that was done in 2013-15 near to a nuclear power plant, because the birds were nesting there many years, and then they were used to make a scientific study to measure what is the environmental impact of the nuclear power plant to the surrounding environment. And two cormorants were killed. They were tried and analyzed. I mean, pulverized first, and they analyzed their corpses to see is the balance of the nature changed because of the nuclear power plant. And yes.
Non ci sono appunto testi letterari o poesie su questi cormorani, ci sono però tantissimi testi burocratici, tantissimi testi scientifici e sondaggi riguardo questi uccelli e la loro vita, e Launau, che ha collaborato a questo progetto, ha utilizzato proprio uno di questi testi scientifici redatto intorno al 2013 che si occupava di analizzare i corpi di due cormorani morti per andare a vedere l'effetto che aveva abitare in questi posti vicino alla centrale nucleare proprio sulla vita dei cormorani e viceversa, quindi come si andavano a mixare questi elementi tra di loro.
So this is one part of the choir piece of Launau for the choir, and the explanation. What are they saying? It's the 52 elements that were found of these bodies of the great cormorants, and the level, how many micrograms of each element the birds had in their bodies. This is the nuclear power plant.
Analizzando i corpi di questi cormorani morti hanno trovato 52 elementi all'interno del loro corpo, di impurità, ecco, di microelementi che andavano proprio a infestare questi corpi vivendo vicino alla centrale nucleare. Questa è una delle zone più tranquille del mondo.
So I don't explain now more. We see this video of 9 minutes and then I continue.